Welcome back, everyone. We are in Dallas, Texas today, and as we're continuing our discussion about innovation, we've stepped a little bit further outside the box, and today we're going to be talking about CBD. This is a product that we are hearing about all the time, and as a scientist, of course, I have to get into the nerdy side of it. And what we start to look at is what's underlying all of this. And what's underlying this is really that neurological and that biology that allows you to be at homeostasis, to be at that calm set. And everybody showcases stress or issues in different ways. But if we treat the root problem, then we see changes in everybody. And it looks like you're treating lots of different things, but in fact, you're treating one. So we are going to be delving into this a little bit today and talking with a company that has been emerging and working in this area, looking both at how they can use this product to help others, but also looking at some really innovative ways to share that message. So on that note, I will pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, how you got here, and what you're working on with your company.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Thompson. I'm privileged to be the founder and CEO of Zalise, as well as the Executive Vice President of the United States Hemp Roundtable, which is the nation's leading business advocacy organization for the future and the advancement of hemp and endocannabinoid science, which includes obviously CBD, but so much more.
Endocannabinoid science. Okay, so break that down because I mean, I can barely repeat it.
I got it. So in your descriptions as you were sharing, you mentioned the question, okay, so how can, a natural compound, a plant, how can it have 10 different effects on 10 different people from the same compound? And the fact of the matter is that we know, and we did not know this, by the way, until 1992, that in all of our bodies there exists something known as the endocannabinoid system. And the endocannabinoid system is designed to regulate or modulate balance throughout the entire body. Every major system, every organ, every single white blood cell, okay, has these endocannabinoid receptors, and the human body produces endogenous cannabinoids naturally. The challenge is when endogenous cannabinoid production is low. And so when it's low, then there is, for example, there is imbalance. So for example, the enzyme that produces pain, okay, if endocannabinoid production is low, that enzyme is called FA2H, can increase in its production and basically overtake the lacking balanced endocannabinoids that are supposed to kind of keep it even. And that's when that can increase. And so this is really cool to think about something that, number one, comes within the body, but then turn right around and actually have it made from a plant. Phytocannabinoids, which are found in predominance within the hemp plant, right? And so phytocannabinoids do include CBD, but they include over 100 others as well. What's exciting is we're learning, and We actually are just now able to, as of January, begin to do studies at the university level on this. But the potential impact to support and benefit human health is extraordinary. So we're excited.
Yeah, so well, talk to us a little bit about the history. I mean, you mentioned 1992, but that's really the time where it was just noticed. Am I correct?
That is correct.
And it's really been in the last, 2 years, 3 years, where we've seen the better understanding of what's happening. I know when I was looking up the research, I couldn't go back too much further than 2017. And as a scientist, when we see something that recent, that's pretty, A, it's exciting, but B, it also tells us this is emerging. And so what I
innovation,
found, right, it is. It's innovation in science, but also in product. And what I'm finding is that the different communities, the scientific communities like psychology and whatnot, are taking the results, looking across studies, and then saying, here's what we need to look at next. Because they're not even getting to do the studies fast enough.
That's right.
And we're finding this self-report to be pretty big.
True, and it's very much the case as it relates to the hemp industry and this whole idea of CBD. And we use the term CBD as somewhat of a descriptor, but again, that's really we feel just the beginning. We feel there are other cannabinoids from the plant that could even be even larger, as far as for a commercial use. And the hemp plant itself has over 50,000 uses just in and of itself. And what's interesting about this, when you do the research, you find that back in the early 1900s, the hemp plant was outlawed in the United States. And there's some really interesting theories behind this as far as who may have been involved in that prohibition. Individuals such as the Hearst family, which obviously had a very large interest in timber for their newspapers, right? The DuPont family, who had a very large interest in pesticides, and the hemp plant naturally needs very little. When you go back and you read Thomas Paine, you'll find that one of the number one reasons he said we should start this nation and not wait is because the hemp economy had so much potential, right?
Really?
Oh, it goes back to the founding. Absolutely.
There's
Listen,
politics everywhere.
politics are everywhere and not new. So for example, hemp would make the sails for our ships, back in the colonial days, and hemp paper and the Constitution, and so there's so much history. Really, hemp is America. But because of this prohibition of these very large economic interests that did not want to see hemp to continue to thrive, they wanted actually to see things like paper and cotton and pesticides, because again, you don't need pesticides very little when it comes to growing hemp. That was accomplished. Well, in 2003, for the very first time, there was an act passed called the CSA, and it allowed you to import industrial hemp, but not grow it here in the U.S., right? And it had to be a very low threshold of certain compounds within it. But in 2014, a gentleman by the name of Mitch McConnell began to champion this whole concept of bringing hemp back to American farmers. Coming from Kentucky, this was an opportunity for him to leave a legacy. And what's so awesome about this is the way in which both Democrats and Republicans have come together. For example, the bill that was finally passed in 2018 was co-sponsored by Senate Majority Leader McConnell, as well as the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, right? They don't agree on anything, but they did agree on hemp.
Well, they agree on a few things. It's just behind closed doors.
There you go. Publicly, great way to say it. But very publicly, they did agree here. And so in 2014, the initial, kind of allowance, if you will, for American farmers to grow the hemp plant first began, and the movement behind it was so extraordinary.
Yeah, it's been huge.
Oh, it's incredible. It's predicted to pass tobacco as an agricultural commodity within 10 years or so. So you're providing hope to an American farmer. You're providing natural alternatives in so many different directions, so many different products, both from a supplemental nutraceutical space, but also hemp plastics. Totally biodegradable.
Yeah, the plastic thing is interesting. Yeah, to be able to go that route, because that's been something that we studied a lot in our first month when we focused on the environment and all of the plastic issues that are coming. But typically, we look in only one industry to solve a problem. We don't necessarily look across.
Right.
And so this is one that, in all honesty, I talked to so many people about the environment, it never once came up. And so I found it really interesting in your talk tonight that you discussed it. And I'm going to look up more about it. So they haven't gotten there yet, though. Am I correct?
It's very early stage.
It's just starting.
Very early stage. I believe that in the world, we were discussing off camera earlier about millennials and so forth.
Yeah.
And I just believe that I believe that the consumer of tomorrow, I believe they want to find a company that is socially responsible, that is not just there to generate profit, but is there to to create change and make impact. And I also believe that environmental sustainability is very important. One of the dreams that I have is for each one of our products to actually be made inside of a bottle made from hemp, droppers that are made from hemp, labels made from hemp, and I believe that we'll achieve that goal, and that's certainly something we're willing to make major investment in as we move forward.
What do you think the trajectory on time is for that?
I think that we're looking at a decade out on that.
Okay, so we have a ways to go then.
We do.
We
We have gotten started. So the many different areas of this. This is such a baby, and there are many areas. When you define a premium brand, what does that mean? It means so many different things. I believe that first and foremost, I believe transparency is so important. A consumer wants to know what is in the product that I'm using, right? And and purity. Developing products that are not made with inexpensive synthetics and so forth, but really researching and developing ways to create products that have very few ingredients as it relates to supplements, for example. I believe that's very important. I believe that consumers want to know that you're using, a product that is also being responsible. One of the dreams that we have is to actually develop product from hemp that is grown, but through the process of breeding of seed, where we are actually able to combine the different benefits from that are derived from things such as the stalks and the seeds and the nuts, but also the flowers. So if you could imagine a product that is made from, cannabinoids pulled from the flower, but that same flower, there's so much waste when it comes to the growing of this plant, because it's typically used for only one purpose. But you can use the other parts of the plant for so many other things, such as the plastics we discussed. So being able to know that, listen, the stalks of that plant also provided this bottle. Growing seed that is actually regenerative, that actually regenerates the soil that it's grown in, right? Versus the problem of over-farming. And then knowing that you're connecting to a brand that is doing those things to the best of its ability. That's just what we believe the future is going to hold.
I mean, you packed so much into a small space. Well, and of course, so what am I always looking for from a science perspective? What are all the different ways that we can use something? And where's the growth, right? What is the next capability versus here's a product, here's where we stay.
Right.
How do we look forward? So one last question, if I may, because the vets are near and dear to my heart. And as we talk about some of the benefits of CBD, right? And also looking at being able to improve the capabilities of the mind. So I look a lot at optimization of how we think, how quickly we respond, how we are able to make decisions under stress. All of these things become very important to
Absolutely.
the military. And I know you've been doing some work specifically to help that group, so I'd love for you to share both about your project, but also what specifically you're targeting.
We began to receive reports from veterans that were contacting us to say, listen, your product has really made a difference in my life, and thank you for that. And so, being someone who's a very proud American, we just began to realize we have our hands on something very special here. And so we launched a Patriot program, which is an initiative designed to get our product into the hands of wounded warriors that maybe cannot afford it, but also to give any veteran of any branch of the armed forces the ability to purchase our product at a wholesale cost. And so it's a small gesture, saying thank you for your service. But one of the other dreams that I have as an entrepreneur is I believe our company one day could be the largest, we'll call it launcher, if you will, of veteran entrepreneurs in America, where we help more veterans become entrepreneurs than any other organization in history. And so we are very serious about doing that, about helping veterans to create their own business, something that they control. And it may be done very part-time in the beginning, but for some it may very well become very full-time. Right. So that's certainly something we're really focused on. We're excited. We want to work in doing the research, and I believe that research and development lead to opportunity.
Yep.
That actually lead to sales and lead to growth. Some people don't feel that way because it's expensive. But one of the dreams we have is to one day get to the point where the VA says, you know what, we want to adopt this incredible supplement, and we want to get this into as many of our veterans that are in our program as possible. And I believe that day will come.
Yeah, I can't speak for specific products and specific companies because that gets outside of the space, but I can certainly speak to the research in saying that CBD is showing incredible promise, and that I think there's a high likelihood that you're going to see a lot more discussion, especially from a military perspective, because we just have such a big reason to be looking into these different areas, and that's really exciting. But I love the idea of helping the entrepreneurs and to be able to create the opportunity for people to have their own businesses, especially our vets. So that's always exciting to me as well. And I'll finish with one key point, which is that I really believe government should be much more about facilitation than regulation. And the reason I say that is because I find business owners like you, and I find NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and I find nonprofits, and I find individual citizens who say the same thing you've said in a number of different ways, and it's something along the lines of, I've been successful and I want to share it. And in government, oftentimes what we do is we try to control that instead of enable that. So I love that you're making that headway, and I hope that we can do more and more and more of it by connecting folks and multiplying.
We call it paying it forward, right?
Yes.
And as it says in the good book, if you give, it shall be given. So if you pay it forward, that brings a blessing back. And the cool concept, the movie Pay It Forward, I think is a great example of that back in years ago, of how you can literally change the world starting with one person. And that person pays it forward to the next and the next. Could be, we see it at Starbucks in line, someone in front of you buys your coffee and then you buy for the person behind you. And it's such a simple concept with so much power. And we're excited to be a small part of that.
Well, I hope so. I love your sentiment, and certainly it's kind of embodied in the work that I've been doing around the country. And I've said several times, I was fine to go around the country and meet lots of people and just have an experience. What I didn't expect was that I would meet such incredible Americans, and that I would be so inspired by what we have in this country. And I think it's sad for me to see that so many people are afraid and nervous about where our country's going, when I've had the opportunity to meet such amazing people. So I like that. We'll end with Pay It Forward.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.